Hi everyone, I'm John.
I'm Jerry.
And I'm Nick, and we are your hosts of the Mindfully Gay podcast.
Today we're excited to invite you to our latest episode, Walk the Talk, a conversation that's close to our hearts.
We dive deep into how we engage with our community, sharing personal insights from our careers and the impactful work we do.
It's not just about what we do, but also how we use our teaching and coaching skills in our own lives.
Expect an episode filled with motivation, personal growth tips, and, of course, our personal stories that we hope resonate with you. So don't wait, join us, and let's walk the talk together.
Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to this Mindfully Gay episode and our Mindfully Gay podcast and to our Mindfully Gay minds.
Oh, yeah.
We are talking about today kind of our unique gifts that we bring to this table and to our community, and specifically, you know, the way in which we walk the walk that we prescribe to others, that we help others with. And I think, you know, we were just kind of briefly talking about this now and the way in which to discuss it, and kind of the thing that came up that I think that would be helpful to share with others is not just our gifts and what we can do and how we contribute to community, but the way in which we might even struggle with our own gifts, the things that we prescribe and things and ways in which we try to help people. You know, it's important that you kind of put your mask on first in terms of, you know, the air mask, put your mask on first so that you can help others. And I know that me personally, you know, my gifts, the way I approach this, I'm helping people with nutrition and with fitness. And, you know, I know from experience that it's difficult to stay regimented and stay on track with those things. And so I have a lot of experience with falling off of that track. And I think that sharing that experience with others that I'm trying to help is a much more tangible way to help people in that process, because that's inevitable. It's going to happen. You know, having a plan for falling down and getting back up, that's the real gift that all of us can give to help others out. But you know, specifically, Jerry, what is your gift that you're bringing to this table, to this discussion, to our community?
My maturity. Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think, obviously, in the other podcasts and kind of the catalyst to this whole thing has been the approach to, I always say the approach to spirituality. I know that triggers people, but this path of mindfulness, elevated consciousness, conscientiousness in the world, and certainly working in those indigenous ways. And then I also, as a mental health therapist, I'm very conscious. It's very interesting to be in the place of a therapist where my job is to provoke people to go into places of self-awareness and consciousness at that level of mental health. That for me personally, I think the value or what I bring to both of those pieces has been the willingness to do my own work.
Yeah.
Right. And you and I have chatted about this a little bit. It's interesting at this stage in my life, there's a lot of people who kind of make these assumptions that I must have it together. And what I recognize is I do have people that I spend time with who are my mentors and teachers and elders. And part of the reason I like spending time with them, right, is they're provocative. Yeah. They help me to see those places of the shadow. And so I really value that layer of work. And even the work I've done with you and the fitness stuff, I've often pondered, I think, man, how did I get to this point in my life and miss these pieces about who I am? And so, yeah, I think that answered the question. We'll get into it more.
John, what about you?
I think I bring in two worlds, I think. My primary education is in psychology. And so you can kind of we can think of that as kind of Western tradition and Western ways of healing, right? And so I have that under my belt, but majority of my work in the last 20, 25 years has been yoga. So I bring in this Eastern tradition. And so I teach yoga, workshops, retreats, and things like that. So I have a yoga teaching practice. That's what I like to call it. I have a yoga teaching practice. I've been teaching for all these years. And I have this psychology background. And I was fortunate enough to be in this time now that yoga, if you've practiced yoga before, and you may experience a therapeutic value from it. It's like yoga is therapeutic, and there's something that shifts and changes within you, not just physically, when you practice yoga. Well, a lot of those stories are anecdotal. If you talk to people, they'll say, "Oh, it's so therapeutic for me. I get so much value," and et cetera, et cetera. But there wasn't a lot of science behind it. It was all anecdotal. Well, there's a faction, this body of people, an organization that was created to find the science behind yoga, the therapeutic value of yoga. And now one can get certified as a yoga therapist.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to do that.
Oh, wow.
And
I didn't realize that.
So I've been able to kind of step right into bringing those two worlds together, my psychology background, because I did psychotherapy for a number of years, and this Eastern tradition, so bringing some science along with this more philosophical, anecdotal, experiential kind of thing and bring it together. And so my work is yoga therapy and yoga instructor. So I have those two pieces that I bring to the table.
Solid. Yeah, I love that you bring up evidence. I didn't realize that is where we are at with, something like yoga, because you're right. I practice every morning as much as I can. I definitely know what it does to me, and there's tons of benefit, and I just adore it. But to hear that, so where I'm coming from, working in the nutrition space, I'm an evidence-based practitioner. I coach from the evidence, and the evidence is evolving, and never, more than now, especially even I think it was last year, there was something like 24,000 studies in food and metabolism in humans published, and so we're starting to, at a rate, it's just continually evolving, and our understanding is getting better as our practice, as our ability to test theories is getting better. But I find that I'm most comfortable coaching from the place of evidence, because I think that, I know what you're saying about the anecdotal stuff. Like there's certainly a lot of individuals in the nutrition space that are coaching from anecdotal things, and it a lot of the times it makes sense.
Yeah.
Why not? Sure, it's going to help. I'm going to believe that this person, and I find often, more often than not, that can be a recipe for, for some upset, for not getting the response or the feedback, or the feeling rather, that you would expect to get based on this anecdotal information. And so I have found that coaching from the evidence, and specifically when it comes to nutrition, we're talking about human trials and humans and metabolism, and as opposed to a test tube or a lab rat.
Right.
But when we can coach from that place, I just find that I'm more confident as a coach in the way I approach discussing protocol with people. And I think also when I can cite sources and I can provide information, it's easier to adopt it than it is from an anecdotal. I think it's more tangible. There's something deeper to latch onto, I guess, than there is just simply by seeing an influencer with 1 million followers saying that this worked for them.
Right.
And so I never knew that the practice of yoga, that we were, it's exciting when we're starting to test physicality in humans and what that can, the benefits that can bring about. We just recently had a study that demonstrates mitochondrial function. So as we age, our mitochondria, these are the powerhouses in the cell. These are the things that essentially turn our food into energy and allow us to harness that energy in a sense. And we now finally have, as we age, these mitochondrial, the density starts to diminish. It's just a natural path. But we now have science on humans that shows that high intensity exercise, even, small bouts of it, it doesn't have to be anything more than 5, 10, 15 minutes, can bring about an increase in the density in these mitochondria in the body. And we have now science in humans that demonstrates something like this. And I think that having, factual data for a lot of people, when they're making a choice to employ a protocol like that, they're just a lot more comfortable doing it. And so I'm happy to hear that we're doing this with yoga too. I had no idea.
Yeah. So now that we've kind of put ourselves out there as far as what we do, it brings the question to the table. So what so what do you do specifically, like with a client or with a group or something? Like what happens? So if we if we were to invite the community to to a sweat lodge, for example, I'm just using that, or to get a training session from Nick, I mean, what can people expect? You want to go, Jerry?
It's gonna be hot. Well, I'm thinking in terms of this walking the talk, and it is interesting. I was just editing some of those videos from our last retreat, and there was an individual that we interviewed who was talking about his experience, and I kind of he was making this comparison that when he has gone to sweat lodges before, and they were nice and they were kind of like this event, and he showed up, brought his food, sweat, ate his food, and went home. But at the retreat, right, we created this atmosphere where we took people through layers of a process so that they're in the process of embodying their intention to be there, embodying the thing that they're looking for, that they had an opportunity to kind of immerse themselves in an experience that the lodge then becomes a part of. And part of that immersion, right, is the explorations of what parts of my life work that I should do more of, and what parts of my life do I need to look at letting go of and transforming out of. And the retreat, or any ceremony, but I think the retreats in particular is the processes of us creating a container that allows for that layer of safety to just kind of let it go. To try on different ways of being, to try on different ways of letting go, and try on different ways of stepping into it. And I know for myself, as someone who's been on this path, and kind of what I was saying earlier, is for me, what we do in a retreat is kind of like my personal practice, where I'm consciously and persistently in that space of evaluating and reevaluating myself and considering what is it that I'm intending into the world? How am I going about manifesting that? And how do I walk in the world in such a way that I'm attracting those things? And that's why I value like the training and the work I've been doing with Nick in particular. And I don't think he intended it, but for me, there's been parts of myself that have kind of been liberated in this process that I never knew were hostage.
Wow.
And how many times have we seen that in a retreat?
Yes.
And in this case, fitness and nutrition has been an opportunity to kind of let go of some things and give myself permission to step into stuff that I've always thought was outside my reach or outside of my consciousness. And so I think what we ask participants to do in the retreat, to me, is a way of living, which is then prepares me in that space when to do ritual or ceremony or to sit with people in those sacred spaces, I'm able to do it. And I think the one compliment I hear from clients most frequently that I most appreciate is that many times I've had clients say, I like working with you because I know you've done your work. And I'm like, hell yeah, I've done the work. I sweat every day.
Working hard, right?
Not always in the lodge.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What popped into my head was, kind of in earlier days of my teaching practice and teaching in a studio with other yoga teachers, I took pride in myself in preparing for my classes. I had a theme and intention. We're going to be working, we're going to be doing back bends, for example. So I'm going to be doing some poses to help prepare the body to get into back bend safely and all of that. So I put this whole thing together. I might be writing notes and kind of running the script in my head and running through it and all of that. I might even get in my own living room and kind of work through a whole sequence. And then I'm ready for class. And I think that's what brought people to my classes, because they could see, oh, John was prepared,
For sure.
and he's got something, ready for us, and I want that, because I've worked with instructors where it's very obvious that they weren't prepared.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're just kind of going through the motions, and it's quite obvious, and their classes weren't that large or not well attended and that kind of thing. So that came to mind when you said one of the greatest compliments, or one of the compliments that you get, Jerry, is that, oh, you've done your work. I want to go. I like Jerry in going to his sweat lodges and other events, because he's done the work. I can relate to that. I feel like
Is doing it.
put in the work.
But and it does. It allows them to see. They know they're going to go someplace with you. It's exciting. Oh, the places we'll see. Like when they know that you as an instructor are thoughtful, you've done the work, you've planned for this moment when they come in and learn from you. Like that's real energy. That's excitement. And I love the idea of retreat in terms of space that allows one to consider what's working for my life and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is exactly what I do with both coaching, but in particular with nutrition. I just started with someone today. He's 380 pounds, and we're in a bad way. There's a lot that we have to assess, and there's a lot that I have to help this person understand that we need to change. And so, the first place I go when I start with someone like this is I need information. I need to get it, I need to get some days worth of food journal so I can see what the food is coming in. And we kind of start from there. And so I always make sure, when we start this, I point out the good. I point out what we have going already in this person. In particular, this person is really good about getting their daily water in. They're working with some plant fibers in the diet. It's looking good, and there's no added sugar food coming in. So those are three things I had to praise this person on, because those were some good that we've got. Right. There's a whole lot of other things that we have to get to and work on. But for now, it's just that place of, I care about what you're giving me, this information. It's important. This space has been created around both of us, and you're letting me in to understand how you see things, and you're going to let me know where you want to go, and we're going to talk about what I see, and we're going to together, make a plan on how to take these first steps as we make goals, and we continue to meet and continue to make goals, and it starts to evolve into eventually, this foundation, this protocol, or this foundation rather, that we can really start to build protocol of change on. And so that to me, that's the thing that I love the most is getting those intake forms. I have an intake form I use with clients so I can get some information. Right. I love the opportunity because this is them letting me in, and it's a chance to have that, these initial conversations about what I see that's good, and then maybe what I see that we could maybe make some changes on.
Right.
This might be switching gears a little tiny bit, but I'm kind of hearing this, okay, this is how we approach it, and this is how we do the work. And I was just sitting there thinking, how do we draw this back into kind of our gayfulness, right? And and I was sitting there thinking, what is it? I know there's often themes that come out in the retreats, but I'm thinking this could be an interesting moment for us to kind of look at our own work, if you will. What parts of gay identity, just kind of putting this question out here, what parts of gay identity, or the gay culture, if you will, whatever we want to define that, what parts of that might edge us out a bit? That might strike within us some level of discomfort or response that may not be so positive.
So you mean, let me see if I understand this correctly. So specifically with the issues that I help people with, so I'm dealing with people that are overweight. I'm dealing with people that probably don't have confidence to go into a gym. I mean, is that what you're kind of talking about? Like I mean, I know what our gay culture can sometimes only be about, and I know that, we're kind of programmed to believe we have to look a certain way in order to behave a certain way, to be these super sexual kings of sex or whatever the fuck it is. But, I can understand, like that is out there, and there are a lot of people that that they're just pining to be a part of that, but don't have the wherewithal to make the transformation to get there. But then maybe the question is they never needed that in the first place. They need community and they need friends that care about them genuinely, not, great success on a hookup app. I don't know if I'm going in the right place with this. Maybe this is turning into another therapy session for me. But
Keep going. Nick.
yeah, right. But I think that I guess I don't know. I guess it's for me in the work that I do with people. It's a question of what it's a question of what is motivating them, and I don't know. I guess if the thing that's motivating them within our gay culture, we could talk about, and it's maybe not the most positive thing, but it's a motivating factor in them dropping 150 pounds and drastically improving all their biomarkers for health, and so that they'll be a better, happier person in this world, and maybe they can start connecting with other humans and create a community, have friends. Is it a limiting thing to let that principle, that thing that might not be one of the shining best parts of our community, our gayness, letting that thing continue to be a motivating factor? I don't know. I know that it's something that drives a lot of people, and me as a coach, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that this person stays consistent, but I guess ultimately it's their own decision on what drives them. But I don't know if I'm answering the question right.
Okay. Well, hold on to that.
Okay.
How would you react?
I heard your question as more personal. What do I do in response to my gayness if something kind of goes awry, and how might I apply my yoga background to handle that or manage that? That's kind of how I'm hearing this question. Because what stops me or halts me in my gayness out in the community is what I talked about in the first episode. I talked about, being or fearing being ostracized because I'm black and gay. And so in some scenarios in the out in the world, I feel like I kind of automatically go into that mode of I gotta hide who I really am to be accepted in my community, especially in the black community. So I've got to kind of do what's called code switching and kind of get out of my gayness and turn on blackness, whatever that is, right? But turn on whatever that is so I feel accepted. That's my dilemma when it comes to, being my authentic queer self. I have to shut it on, turn it on and turn it off. Still. And so I think when I apply the yoga to that, it's I think what I'm applying is not a way to fix it necessarily. It's more about I'm aware of it. Yoga teaches me awareness. Yoga has taught me to, open my eyes a little wider, to broaden my scope. And with that broader scope, there is the potential of anxiety and, more things to manage. But yoga has also taught me and continues to teach me to just observe, just be a witness to all of this, to not judge, just observe it, see it as for what it is, and not put judgment on it. And I think that's what I tend to do when I find myself in these circumstances where I got to turn it on, turn it off, rather than chastising myself for it, because I know I will, or I have at least, that I can maybe just kind of pull back a little bit and just notice that this is happening. Oh, here it is, it's happening again. I'm code switching, and I'm just going to go with that right now. I'm not putting any judgment on it, It's that this is just the way it's going to go right now. And I think when I do that in that situation or even in other situations, I just feel more calm in the whole situation and not get all worked up and put myself down and all this stuff. I can just, okay, well, that's what's happening right now. I'm feeling this feeling, and I'm just going to breathe through it and do my best, right? And if it's something that I really need or want to change or shift, then I got to do some additional work around that. That may not happen in that moment, but it's more about the awareness and not putting judgment on myself or the situation.
You know, I was thinking about something similar this morning when I was walking Biscuit, my dog, for potty walks, and it came up. I was thinking about, is it wrong to pursue fostering community that allows us to avoid that? So pursuing community building and putting people around us of mindfully gay minds around us, and in doing so, almost become insulated from that ability, that need to have to code switch.
Oh yeah.
And you know, and I wonder if that's a bad thing, if that's such a bad thing. I think it's creating space. I think it's going to be creating a place where people can come and feel safe and not have to feel compelled to do something like that. But I wonder if that motivation, I wonder if that's not exactly the best way. But I also like what you said about, because, you know, the thing that I'm starting to understand more and more about my mind is the assumptuous quality of it, the non-stop, like, just assumptions that keep coming in and out of my mind. And so I can put myself in a situation where you're in, where you know that you've got a code switch for whatever reason, you know, because you're seeing it before you, but you're also making assumptions about what the individual, but understood because you've had experience with it, so you already kind of know how it's going to go, so you know what you got to do in the first place.
Yeah.
But you know, I wonder, I liked what you said about yoga, and it's about, it enables you to be less of just a player of assumptions in your mind, but more of an observer of what's in front of you, and maybe with less assumptions.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to do, but it is definitely something that I feel like I've gotten better at in times. I'm in a bit of a cycle of it right now, but I've definitely gotten better at recognizing, hey, wait a second, you are creating a lot of fodder for worry and whatnot in your mind, and it's all based on assumptions, and you're wasting so much energy and time right now, and you just haven't even seen what's literally in front of you right now. Like, it's worse than doom scrolling on social media, because you're not even using a device, you're using your own mind, and you've completely escaped from reality, because you're getting into this tunnel of assumptions.
Right. Yeah.
But, you know, what do you think about that, Jerry? What do you think about, you know, the motive of pursuing community so that you can avoid the greater community at large? I mean, I guess in a sense that's what we do. We are creating space for people to come in to heal, because we've all kind of gotten damaged and banged around from things. But do you think that it's an unhealthy thing to pursue the bringing on of community so that you can insulate yourself from the things that might otherwise trigger you to code switch?
I don't think of it. I don't think of what we're doing with Mindfully Gay or creating that kind of community under any circumstances as a way of insulating. In fact, I would argue that it's a process of evolution. That it gives us an opportunity to evolve, to find normality in our uniqueness, right? To hear it in how we relate to each other, beyond the objectifications that happen, but to hear it more at that heart-centered space, that in those spaces that we create those safer containers, I have an opportunity to evolve and then go out into the world and infect the world with my new genius. To infect the world with this new layer of consciousness and willingness to show up more fully without apology.
No, that I like that, but what does that mean, going out into the world, like actively, like missionary work? Like, are we going out what you're going out and just simply being this person of evolution, this person that's gotten what they needed from community, so you're in a better place to have a conversation with someone that might otherwise prompt you to code switch. It's I
I'll give you an experience I had a couple of years ago. I was part of this process here in the state of Utah where we were working to eradicate conversion therapy in the state. And that was a very challenging time in which how do we go forward with our messaging that conversion therapy is dangerous and harmful, and communicate and engage in such a way that those who are much more conservative in their thinking could hear us. And as you were talking earlier, I am the group shaman, so I'll go here. Right, there's a lot of shamans practice what's called shape-shifting, right? And in its most literal form, a shaman will take on the form of the environment or some other creature to gain some kind of medicine from it, right? And so that shaman may turn into a wolf and be able to be in the shadows. I think in many ways, queer folks in particular are very gifted at shape-shifting. That we've done it in the shadows and in shame. And what I'm suggesting is it's part of our gift to take on whatever form is necessary to convey whatever message or medicine needs to be in the moment. And so a couple of years ago, I was in direct relationship with a lot of people from the Mormon Church and their family service system, like a lot of higher ups, and was having very intimate, specific conversations about my life, my relationship, how the church had harmed me in their philosophy and their ideas, and was able to present it in such a way that they were actually able to hear it and digest it. And eventually I got invited to speak at one of their regional conferences that they don't ever let non-members participate in.
Wow.
And what they wanted to hear was, we want you to get up and tell your story. And I told them, I said, I don't know that my story is very flattering to your religion. And I don't want to cause unnecessary duress. But I had an apostle and a couple of general authorities there and about 300 people. And we talked very much about my coming out, dealing with Mormonism. If I were in isolation, I would have never gotten there.
Yeah.
But again, by my places of sanctuary have been in my communities with my other gay brothers and queer folks, hanging out with the radical fairies, doing that self-exploration. So that I really became so intimate and comfortable with myself that despite the opposition, I didn't feel a need to compromise or apologize for my existence, and was able to then bring it into the world.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, so to have a confidence in yourself to share your story, but specifically to have confidence in your gay ass self to share your story with an apostle sitting next to you.
Yeah.
Like that to me.
He gave me a standing ovation.
That's amazing. I mean, that's a movie scene to me, Jerry. That, you know, that my understanding of the church, the same church you're talking about that I was brought up in, you know, is that I mean, that it makes me feel uncomfortable to think that someone is standing up and sharing the realities of their gay life with these people that probably just despise it, but to hear that, you know, that it was received in a different way is I think maybe promising is the word. You know,
Well, but I think you know the point you were asking this question about, are we isolated? I think. I do not want to think about this as isolationism. I want to think about it as incubation. I want to think about it as like these conversations that we're having. I look forward to them, and I love being a part of them because I start to understand myself very differently in this context of sitting with, you know, two other gay brothers who have had very different lives. In fact, I texted you guys last week when I was getting ready to go into ceremony, but I was really pondering, how in the fuck did our lives get together? Like, you're from the East and you're from the West, and like, what kind of energy brought us together?
Right. Yeah.
Where we're like, we might potentially have some kind of energy here that could be infectious to others around us. And I don't think it's just about us three. I think it's about the willingness. I would love to see other podcasts and discussion groups and story groups and opportunities where, imagine if there were 6 of us sitting at this table.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? And so in that insulation, if you will, is the opportunity for incubation, for growth. And then I walk out into the world and I'm just like, stop me.
Yeah, I'm seeing the benefit of that community, and I like that shift of insulation to incubation, because incubation is about growth. And what I'm envisioning is, someone who's kind of gone through, their life's path so far, and that's what they know, and they are then exposed to this podcast or our website or a social group, or comes to one of our retreats, right? And they get this opportunity to, be in circle with these other men and hear their stories, and see that there's potential. That, I'm seeing my little life, this path that's been so narrow and, blinders, and now just hearing your story and your story and your story is giving me opportunity and vision of, you can do that. Could I do that? I never thought of it that way, and getting this new perspective. So I think it is good for someone to maybe go into that incubation period in order to, be exposed to different stories and see the potential that they may have, because of someone else's life path. And then as they begin to try on these different values and belief systems and words and ways of looking at self, then they get to go practice that. That's the kind of going out into the world. Like, I liked what you said, and I think I want to try that. You sounded so confident in that, or you did something that seemed so positive and uplifting, and I resonate with that. I want to try that. And so they go try that. They're stepping into, I think, or trying on that new story and that new way of seeing self. And the more that they practice, now I'm thinking yoga, the more that they practice, you kind of get good at it.
Yeah, once you nail a back bend, that's a pretty amazing feeling. It's a pretty, like, holy shit, I'm doing this right now feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, where's the chiropractor?
Yeah. It's amazing that you say that, because sometimes there'll be, I'll teach a class, and we're working up to, I call it the apex pose. And it might be challenging. It could be challenging. And I'll stand in front of the class, everyone's sitting, and I'll demonstrate it. And, and they do some wild pose. Let's say it's a back bend, and, or some balancing pose. And I look at the students, and they're all like, these weird faces, shaking their heads, saying to themselves, I can't do that. I can't do that. No way. And I teach them, if anyone's seen The Karate Kid, the original movie, wax on, wax off.
Yeah, sure.
And, we're doing a lot of waxing on and waxing off. We're doing the same things over and over and over and over again. But they're building the foundation for being able to do that balancing pose or that back bend, even though they've never done it before. But I put them in, I lead them up to the pose, and then, like magic, they do it. And sometimes it's so fascinating, and I just get a heart warmer experience out of this. You'll hear someone just, they can't contain it. They'll say, I did it,
Mhm.
just out in class,
Mhm.
you know.
It's a big deal.
I did
though.
it.
Yeah. Right.
But think about the retreats. What's the number one thing that keeps people from coming to the retreats?
Oh, someone said it.
They say it every time.
Just well, one is like the lodge, but I think just being social.
They're afraid to be with other gay men.
To
Yeah.
get into it.
That as much as people angst about feeling lonely and isolated, and I hate the apps, right? The opportunity to show up and to sit intimidates the crap out of people.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm thinking about that. Remember that guy
Oh,
that
yeah.
came 3 times and sat out?
Bought
Yes.
tickets and never came in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3
Yeah.
times this guy registered for
Yeah.
never
Oh.
showed up. And when he finally did show up, his narrative was, I was afraid that I wasn't going to be part of the group
Oh.
because I didn't have the right body or the right age or the right look.
It's-
And then when they do show up, I mean, I think in that film clip with Sean, what he says is, oh my gosh, like that revolutionized the idea I have about myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and gave you a more, not this idea of oneself that is certainly influenced much by social media and those ideas and norms that are projected out there. And I can see how someone getting a diet of that when they're trying to understand themselves in terms of assimilating back into the running water and meeting other fish type of thing, like how, but I'm not at all that, and so how do I, and I can't, so I'm just going to stand on the outside and look, and I totally get it. But that's it. It's about what's possible. It's about showing someone what's possible. I love that you said that, because that's exactly what I do with the work that I do. It's through consistency with nutrition, and training especially, but specifically with the nutrition component, with getting to a place of consistency with that, the possibilities that open up, the physical possibilities that you can do in this world that you maybe had resigned to as we're aging. People, it's a traditional trajectory that as we age, we start to become less, we start to do less, because that's just what everyone has done before us. But the truth is it doesn't have to be that way. There's a nutritional approach to doing this, and you can get a hell of a lot more out of your 60s, 70s, 80s, and onward.
Yes.
And so it is about demonstrating what's possible. And I can see how, a community like we're talking about that may work as an incubator, that may insulate and keep out kind of the noise for a bit.
Yes, right.
But it's all in an interest to show what's possible, to allow the person to maybe to even better, well, certainly better connect than before, but to better connect with the reality of the world out there once they have a better connection with themselves.
Yeah.
Do you know, I'm going to share something, and I hope I don't regret it. But we'll cut it out if I do. We wouldn't do that, would we?
I was just going to say, if it fucking makes me cry, we're going to cut it out. Because I can't be crying today.
Well, I was going to say, first of all, like this morning I texted you and I was like, he has me doing this particular thing with my workout, which is like my least favorite thing to do, but I do it so I don't get yelled at. But I did, what is it that I did? The high intensity?
High intensity work. So, yeah.
But at one point, I was listening to Miss Martha Wash. I was like going to town. I was feeling really good, had a good sweat going. And at one point, I looked at my watch and my heart rate was like, I'd never seen it so high before. And I thought, I'm going to die.
But then pause and just think about where you were just right there. You were grooving out. You're having a great time.
I was having a great, I was loving it. I was so stoked. And so then I looked on my phone and I thought I could see what my heart was doing. I was like, oh my God, Nick, look, I almost blew up my heart. This is so great.
Well, you're really putting it to good use. Is a better way to phrase it. But yes. Yeah.
But so that just in the conversation that came up, because I thought, frankly, I had been working at this for a while and I've never been able to get my heart rate up to that capacity. And it was like so naturally there. And it was not this terrible experience. In fact, it was invigorating.
Wow.
Absolutely.
And
what's possible.
What's
Oh,
possible,
what's
yeah.
possible.
Right.
But, we're talking a little bit about this idea, a little bit about like the insulation and being in our safe little bubbles. And I'll be honest, when I first met you, And when you first started coming here, I was having a tremendous amount of anxiety because in my mind, I thought I wasn't sure what we shared in common, and I felt like your world seemed so different and unique from mine, and your health capacity was so different than mine, and I would have to literally consciously kind of talk to myself about, okay, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do this, and I got to just drop my story. And then what's so interesting, again, we see this in the retreat,
Yeah.
is
Drop the story.
the more I've gotten to know you in this capacity, I'm just like, wow, we all kind of carry similar stories.
Yeah.
And I could see so much easier to project John's life or Jerry's life or Nick's life. But then when we're in that intimate process of engagement, and I would tell you, for me, the instigation in my life is, and I've said this to you a few times, when I face those challenges, what it liberates afterwards is so profound. And some of the things that I've been discovering in this last year about myself, I didn't even know needed to be found.
Oh, wow.
And again, I think that's so metaphoric for what we see at the retreats. And I'm just putting that out there because I think if we normalize this and talk to people about strategies of how to get there, which we've all kind of talked about what our strategies are. I think that serves a purpose.
No, and it's definitely, it's the dropping the story bit. Damn it! I just lost my point. Just a second. Just a second. It's gonna come back.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, right. But it's shit. Yeah, sorry, John. That's gonna be an edit. I really don't know. Somebody else go, and it'll come back to me. Apologies.
What you just said about the retreat, but I think really captures who we are, the three of us, and what has brought us together and what we want to share. It's something that I said earlier about yoga. Yoga has taught me to just be an observer and to work on letting go of the judger, right? And I think with the things that we do individually in our careers, in our work, and how we work with people, I think that's how, at least I feel this, that's how we're approaching our work. That because we're working with people in difficult circumstances, life situations, being deconditioned and overweight, or living with depression, or feeling like they don't have the physical body to do yoga, and they're stiff and they're broken or whatever. But if we're going in and giving them this opportunity, and we show them that they have potential, and we've set aside the judgment. They might be judging themselves up and down, but we're extracting that and we just keep putting it aside and keep showing up and showing them, like you did your client. Let's highlight the positive. Let's highlight the successes. Let's put that at the forefront, and let those aspects and truths about yourself start to lead you and guide you and shift your story about yourself. I think that's a characteristic I think the three of us have, which helps bring us together to do this work that we're doing in this podcast, etc. But I think it's showing up in our work, our individual work too, and why people do come to us and want to come to us. Because we're setting aside that level of judgment. At least, we're trying, at least I'm trying, and seeing the good, seeing the positive, and shining it back, being the mirror for them. And I was talking to a guy the other day, and he was like, "John, you're so disciplined." And it's like, he's a farmer. I was like, "Well, you're pretty disciplined yourself." "Oh no, I'm not. Like, look at the work that you do. You've
Yeah,
got to be
sure.
disciplined. Running a farm and raising horses and cows and the whole 9 yards.
For sure.
There's discipline, and you had to kind of sit back and go, "Oh yeah."
It's true. It's the ability to reflect. I know the point that I was going to make now. So the ability to, this idea that you have to have it all together, or understanding the reality that you don't, and that as we age, even as we go on longer in life, even with accomplishments and great change and growth, it's a continual process.
Yes.
Like that point where you were at a year ago, that wasn't it. And in fact, it's okay to reflect now and realize you didn't have it all together there. We're in a much better place now. Maybe you'll never have it. I don't even, maybe it's never getting to a place of having it all together. Maybe it's having a more of a growth mindset. I'm reading this great book, and I'm sorry, I don't know the name of it right now.
It's Mindset.
Mindset is the name of the book. And it's
I'm reading it, I'm loving
it's
it.
written. It's it's the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
Oh yes.
And for sure, the work that we all do is to help facilitate this growth mindset in people, so that you can understand that where you are right now, if it's feeling suffocating, you're trapped and you're a disheveled mess and whatever, that's just a place that we grow from. That's just a place of change. And when you can have a community, you can have people, caretakers like us within it, then that community can really help people shift from that mindset into a growth mindset.
Absolutely. I believe that.
You said something earlier I want to come back to, because I feel bad that I don't feel like I didn't have a great response to it at the moment when I asked the question about where we get edged out, and you kind of start describing the pretty boy objectification kind of dynamic in our community, and I was just thinking about what I was saying about that process of kind of engaging with you and all my insecurities. And it's interesting, not only do we often project those stories on ourselves, but we assume when we look at someone that we know their story.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's interesting how many gentlemen I've talked to that you think, oh my God, their lives must be perfect because they're handsome and they got this body and they have all these things. And I can tell you in the privacy of my office that those folks are struggling with their insecurities as well. And their insecurities are, am I good enough? Just, I think that is a theme in our culture. And so I think in response to what you were saying about that, because I want to challenge that I don't know that, I think somehow we've been seduced to believe that that's a narrative that's more privileged, and that the rest of us are just at the beck and call of that.
That's correct, yeah.
Because I think part of that is we collude with that story when we believe it.
Yes.
And if what happens, just like I had that confidence in the church, what happens when I have that confidence in my community that, hey, I know who I am. I know how I show up, and I appreciate my growth set, right? My growth opportunity. So I don't know if that's a great response to what you were saying, but I didn't want to leave that hanging.
No, I like that you did. I think that I think you're right. That ideal exists not just because of the individuals that people think are a part of it, but because there are plenty of other people that are feeding energy into it by thinking that that's so. Meaning, there are people on the outside of the perfect world, and there are people that are supposedly within it. But the truth is it's like you're saying, you're seeing people from all walks of life, from all over the spectrum of life, and the problems. It's, am I good enough? Am I good enough? That's it. It's we all struggle with it all the time, and we have different ways of putting on something to deal with it. But no, that does help. I think that it's, I think just being open to struggling with other people around you and sharing in struggles is just a very beneficial thing.
Yeah. And I think especially, since, our podcast is Mindfully Gay, and just in this, however you identify, men who have sex with men or men who admire men, queer, gay, however you might label yourself, you know, I think we want to provide a space um, that allows them to, look at all those, you know, triggers out there that make them feel less than. Oh, I don't have the right body. Oh, I'm not the right age. And the list goes on, right? And one of the things that I experience with my men's yoga classes is that, a typical question I might get from a potential student who's never been before, they typically will ask, well, is everyone in shape? Right? And something that I've been able to learn in teaching yoga, especially these men's yoga classes, is that because I was falling into the trap too, like I wanted to surround myself with all these gorgeous men, you know, um, but the reality is we all come in different shapes and sizes, and different ages, of course, certainly different colors. But our goal when we come to the class, we're doing yoga. No matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, whatever your ability is, on or off the yoga mat, we're in this together. And I want more queer people to experience that, not just in my yoga classes, but to see, to understand that they don't have to live up to some certain standard to be gay.
to be accepted as okay. It's okay that you're gay. So you're perfect, so it's okay that you're gay. Yeah, I understand. What you're saying. Right.
That they can, we talked about this in the first episode too, just show up in your uniqueness. We have this beautiful power and significance because of who we are and what we are. And if we can be, again, that mirror or a catalyst or an usher even to help someone, there's other ways of being and seeing and and believing in yourself, and giving them that exposure, I think can be so enlightening to people.
And just to add to that, John, I think, and the other podcast I hope will kind of show our trajectory. None of us woke up and ta-da, we're gay and happy and
right. Oh, yeah.
We've all kind of shared our stories.
I was late.
but I mean, I think here we are in 2024, and we're saying, okay, in retrospect, this is kind of how we got here, and I know what would have been so much more helpful for me back in the day would have been community. I was so hungry for it, and I know. My first adventure to the Radical Fairy Sanctuary really inspired this sense of like the innate spiritualist kind of energy that we create, not because we're engaged in any dogma, but because we're engaged in the dogma of love and connectedness. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly hope that's where Mindfully Gay is going to take us, is creating those pockets of communal connections.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Mindfully Gay for today.
That was nice. Thanks, Mindfully Gay.
Thanks, Mindfully Gay. Well, really, really another great conversation. I think you're getting the sense that we're just coming together, and we're not scripted, obviously. We might start with, a particular topic or question, and we just see where it goes, and just having the trust, I think, in allowing that to happen. And I think that's how community can be. That's how just conversation can be. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to, be so scripted and have a certain standard of how to do things and be things. It's just trusting the moment.
Yeah. Approaching it with openness.
Yeah, I love that. Approaching it with openness and I hope that you're approaching this podcast in the same way, and just kind of sitting with us around a table and listening to this conversation and getting yourself involved perhaps in this conversation, which you can absolutely do. We've got an Instagram page. It's mindfully_gay. Follow us there. Go to our website, mindfullygay.com. You'll see some of the events that we're doing. We've got some free social events, just some ways to just get together. Movie nights, game nights, book club. We got retreats coming up later on this year. So really encourage you to, take a look at what's out there. Find and see the potential and see if it works for you. Well, that wraps up our Walk the Talk episode. Thank you all for tuning in to Mindfully Gay.
It's been a real pleasure sharing our experiences and discussing how we integrate our work in the community with our personal lives.
We hope our conversation today has sparked some thoughts and inspired you in your own journey.
Remember, walking the talk isn't just about what we say, but what we do. We'd love to hear how you're doing that in your life.
So feel free to share your stories with us. Send us an email at info@mindfullygay.com. Your insights and experiences matter to us.
And don't forget, there's always more to discuss and explore. Stay tuned for the next episode of Mindfully Gay, where we'll dive into another engaging topic.